So this today, dropping down, this is how to drop down like a boss. How do you close 90, 95+% of the time that you ever do any presentations? And so with that, we're going to break this up into 2 segments. So you can have this into your notes. One segment is going to be on mentality and perspective on the dropping down process. So one is going to be on mentality and perspective. And then the other side, this is going to be on technique and strategy. Technique and strategy throughout the dropping down process. So there'll be 5 keys to mentality and perspective, 5 keys to technique and strategy. So with that, first, most important, or they're all going to be important, but first one especially is going to be the understanding of affordability, right? We as representatives, we have to be able to understand that, well, how affordability works, what customers can and what they can't afford, and really what that means for the entire dropping down process. So first, especially with affordability, we need to understand the relationship between value and price. And so that quick review, oops, wrong one. That quick review, pulling it over to the whiteboard. So you've got the general relationship between value and price. So when you have value equal, or when value is greater than price, that's a sale every time. I think we can all understand that when the value of something is perceived as higher than the price of something, it's always a sale. When the value of something is perceived as equal to the price, well, you don't really get a straight answer. And so how does this turn out as far as what the customer says? Oh, honey, we love it. Let me think about it. Let me think about it, right? So from there, you have the third level to it. When value is less than price, oh, honey, we just can't afford it. We just can't afford it. There's no way we can squeeze this into the budget. We can't afford it. And so for us as representatives, I put this relationship or these 3 points up because we as representatives need to be able to understand this when it comes to the idea of affordability. And so because of that, you can go ahead and you can actually just change the word value and change that with price expectation. You can just change all of that with price expectation and understanding that it's not that the value is just perceived. And so price does not actually exist, right? We as representatives have to understand that price is not a real thing. Price is not a real thing. And so moreover, understanding the value between the relationship between value and price. And to tell you guys a quick little story on that, I think of my dad every time. My birthday was back in March. And so for my birthday, I had asked my dad if he could hook me up with some AirPods. I had never owned AirPods before. I really wanted them. I was running more often, so I wanted to have some AirPods without the wires. And so my dad is a military guy. He's all about finding the best deals, all about kind of getting things at the lowest possible price. And he'll look around. And so eventually he actually found AirPods. Like, guys, I'm telling you, real AirPods, like actual AirPods, no knockoffs, nothing, real AirPods. You guys know how much AirPods cost, right? Like 150, 200 bucks. Yeah, he found AirPods for $60. Real ones, 60 bucks. Guess what he did? Yeah, he didn't just buy them. He bought 6 of them. He bought 6 of these. He literally sold a couple while he was eating lunch to this one waiter. And so the thing is we all can understand that price doesn't actually exist, but everyone gets a good deal. Like no one says no to $60 AirPods, legit AirPods, right? And that's why my dad would go and buy 6 of them. So bigger point to this, especially is understanding, especially with your customers, right? Understanding with your customers that it's not that they can't afford Cutco, it's that they have more value placed in something else. Because the truth of the fact is that if they were driving down the street and all 4 of their tires popped, they're not going to leave their car on the street. they're going to go ahead and drop the $1,000 for those 4 new tires within the next couple hours, or definitely by the next day, right? If they went and they broke their phone, they're not going to wait. They're going to drop the extra $1,000 for that iPhone so that they have a phone right now. And so if you have to ask yourself, and I know I was walking through this with one of my students last night, but you have to be able to understand that if they have to make the choice between buying a set of Cutco or groceries, then they probably can't afford the Cutco. But unless it's a choice between Cutco and groceries, they can afford it, right? And so with that, I need y'all to understand that before affordability, money ever becomes an issue, there must first be a decision. There has to first be a decision for the customers to purchase. My favorite example of this, probably a bunch of y'all can agree with me. I hope so. But my favorite one to this one is, I need to go to college. I have to go to college. It costs $40,000. I don't have. I'll figure it out. Right? They make the decision, I'm going to go to college and I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the $40,000 in loans. I'll figure it out. I'll spend the next 10, 20 years trying to pay it off. Right? Because money is not the issue. It's the decision people make and then figure out the money for it. College is just my favorite easy example because like millions of students, as well as the parents across the country, all push this ideology because first comes the decision, college, and then comes the money, the loans and the student debt for a decade or multiple. Because the thing is that price doesn't actually exist. Because if price existed, then inflation would not exist. If it did, then economics wouldn't be a thing. If price actually existed, then the law of supply and demand wouldn't be a law. And on this point, has anyone here run into someone with Wusthof, Henkel's, or Shun yet? Yeah? Well, so understanding that, do Wusthof and Shun and Henkel's, do they have investment plans? Do they split their payments up over 5 months? No. These middle-aged homeowners, they go into the store and they swipe their card for the full amount without a question, because price doesn't actually exist. It's perceived value relative to the price. Because realistically, I'm positive a lot of y'all could go out and be selling homemakers for $3,000. You could, but that's not the current real price of it, but you could, right? Because price isn't real. And first, as representatives, we need to understand affordability. So then the second, that was the first one on mentality and perspective. Second key is to assume the sale. Assume the sale. And with that, assuming the sale is understanding weak language. But first, assuming the sale. Who here was ever raised under the ideology of, hey, don't assume things. If you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right? That's a joke. You make an ass out of you and me. Okay, so cool. If you weren't raised on that, this should be easier for you. And if you were, you're just like me, right? I need you to delete that from your mind. Delete that phrase, delete that belief from your mind. Because take this as a tip for your life, not really just for Cutco. You need to assume from life that which you believe to be true. And when you assume these things of life, then life will deliver to you that which you expect of it because of your assumptiveness. If that seems kind of confusing, just think of all the kids, think of all the people that ever grew up rich or popular or successful, or insert whatever greater quality or advantage or trait. Because there have been studies ran questioning, why is it that these types of people are typically also always the first ones promoted, more often hired, generally more successful, or more socially accepted, right? This is because these people grew up and they assume this to be true of their life and their surroundings. So imagine when you call your customer, imagine this. Imagine every time you call a customer, right? And over the phone, they're like, yes, honey, I already know. I want the Homemaker Plus 8. Like, I'm definitely getting it. I'm so excited. I'll see you then. Or just as you're about to actually start the presentation, your customer says, I'm definitely buying the Homemaker Plus 8. I already know it. And you know 100% that it's a guaranteed Homemaker sale. Like, no doubt about it, 100% guaranteed Homemaker sale. Think about how you would feel, right? Think about how you would feel knowing that, how you would act, your body language, your tone, your demeanor, your confidence, your pace, the very language and the words you use, or better said, the words that you don't use. Because part of the dropping down process is first fully believing that you will be selling something. This is because if you've ever had a no sale and you call your manager and say, oh, they didn't buy anything, then if you ever say they didn't buy, you officially forfeit your right to ever sell an ultimate set and call your manager saying you sold an ultimate. Because if when you don't sell, you say that they didn't buy, well, then you relinquish any control you have in the presentation. So by that very logic, you technically will never sell anything. You're just waiting on customers to buy things. And so with that, second key here is you have to assume the sale. And you need to take ownership for what can happen. And so because of this, assume the sale, expect that to happen. And so here comes the third key, which is your expectations and the framing of the presentation for your customers. And so from this assumption creates framing and your expectations. Now I'm using the word framing. Some of y'all, this will immediately connect. Some of you won't. If it doesn't immediately connect with you, you definitely need to do more demos because you'll start to understand this more and more, but it's a concept of framing. Framing is setting the stage. If you've ever been taught by a manager or a video to just say set more often, and then you sell more sets because you keep saying set more often, right? That's an emphasis towards framing. Framing is helping the customer understand what a lot is and what a little is, what everyone normally gets and what they don't, whether people buy today or they don't buy today. The types of people that buy which type of set, what set is for what, who, when, where, why, how. Framing is defining every part of the situation and framing their decisions, right? 30, 40, 50 years, 30, 40, 50 years, 30, 40, 50 years, Ms. Jones. So to this point, closing is helping the customer feel comfortable and confident in the decision-making process. Something we do with and something we do with and we do for them. So a very simple way to understand this is that when you give a customer two options, when you're calling them to set the demo, hey, Ms. Jones, this time or this time. Or, hey, babe, what movie do you want to watch? This movie or that movie? Would you rather watch this really beautiful and tear-jerking movie or the blockbuster knockoff of Everyone Always Skips Over? Which one would you prefer, babe? Right. If you noticed, I just used some different adjectives to frame a more clearly enjoyable choice between those two movies, right? Well, check this out. Check this out. Would you rather watch this like really beautiful movie or this really beautiful movie? I didn't use any different words. In fact, I used the exact same words. But just through my tone and the way in which I emphasize each one using the same words, it was easier for you to frame which one you'd rather go for. I can use the same words because the thing is, guys, words don't actually matter, right? This is the same reason. This is exactly how all of us can read the exact same script, but I know I can sell way more and way more often than most of y'all, despite the fact that I'll read the exact same script that you do. Right? And this is what creates framing, because your expectations for the presentation is what will directly and indirectly affect the way in which you frame the presentation. You guys remember going through training, right? And so understanding that, remember going through training, all we really do in training is we teach you how to feel super confident and to expect the sale. Because the thing is that we can't really teach you the concept of framing during training because frankly, it's just way too far out there. But as long as you go into a presentation fully confident and expecting to sell, you will indirectly assume the sale. And because of this, you frame to the customer the fact that everyone purchases this set. That's why, if you guys remember from your first weekend on the job, that's why most of our coaching calls with you are always based around your expectations. Because if you haven't done this already, once you actually memorize the manual, like can recite the manual from memory, committed to memory, then you'll truly start to understand the concept of framing and learn to manipulate situations with friends, family, coworkers, in whichever way you prefer. So then here comes the fourth key: your language, your tone, pacing, and enthusiasm. Fourth key is language, tone, pacing, enthusiasm. So everyone go ahead and write down these words. I want you to write down these phrases, these words. Ready? I want you to write down maybe. I want you to write down sort of. Could you? Anyway. Possibly. Hopefully. Like. I guess. Maybe, sort of, could you, anyway, possibly, hopefully, like, I guess. I want you to write down those words. And once you've written them down, I want you to cross them all out. I want you to cross out all those words, because what I want you to do is I want you to remove the weak language from your vocabulary. I need y'all to understand that weak language, maybe, could you, possibly, sort of, like, hopefully, I guess, right? These literally provide negative value to every single person that either uses them or ever hears these words. Never do those phrases or words ever inspire confidence. Never do they provide clarity. Never do they instill certainty, which is funny. You know, they say never, right? And I just said it 3 different times, is because I'm fully confident in the fact that they don't inspire confidence, clarity, or certainty in anyone that hears or uses them. This is very important to note because your customers, your friends, your family, the people whom you will one day lead and manage will always look to you for confidence, for clarity, for certainty. And guys, if you've opened up Instagram at any point in the past 48 hours, Facebook, Twitter, literally anything, the TV, right? Especially nowadays, between a global shutdown, a shuttering economy, and nationwide rioting and looting, is confidence, clarity, and certainty kind of important. Because with that as well, looking directly into your presentation, first, you also have to create engagement. And we're talking about language. We're talking about pacing, tone, and enthusiasm. But first, you need to create engagement. How? Do you guys notice what just happened right there? Right there, where what I can do is the fact that the lack of words, the stillness, the silence, power pausing to create engagement and emphasis simultaneously. Power pausing to create engagement and emphasis simultaneously. Power pausing creates certainty. It creates clarity. It exudes confidence. This is because pacing in your presentations is critical. Because watch this. If you try and you speak quickly, then it's harder for people to follow along. And so if you really need to make sure people understand that something, and so it truly sticks, slow down. Let your sentence hang in the air so that they can recognize and digest the information. And you can use pacing to your advantage to increase someone's heart rate, like I just did by speeding up really fast and then creating excitement. You can also then slow it down and put people at ease and help them make certain points feel more easily understood with enough time to digest what's being said. This is why your managers will always say, slow down on the phone, because normal speed for you is fast for everyone else. Pacing also allows you to breathe. Take a second. Understanding everything thus far, specifically with language, your tone and pacing is what we as managers really mean when we say enthusiasm sells. Enthusiasm and having a lot of doesn't mean having crazy eyes and screaming into the computer and bouncing off the walls. It's the way in which you deliver the presentation and the certainty in your words that instills the confidence in yourself and enthusiasm in your customers. It's having certainty in what you're going to say that breeds the confidence in you, which by nature breeds confidence into your customer, which creates this positive feedback loop of general excitement and enthusiasm for everyone involved. And so the fifth key to mentality is verbal fencing. You got to be a lawyer. The final bit of mentality and perspective to transition us into technique and strategy is understanding dropping down or showing smaller sets. More simply put, it's a negotiations process, much like verbal fencing. If you've ever watched fencing, imagine your customer on one side doing everything they can to sell you on the reasons why they shouldn't buy. And you're on the other side trying to sell them on all the reasons that they should. The negotiations process is the verbal back and forth, poking and parrying. Them using objections is poking at you. You handle the objections, parrying the poke. You asking the questions is finding the openings in their stance. So when you ask a question, they can't even parry your poke. And since it's verbal fencing, you need to take on some attributes of some of the best people when it comes to verbal fencing. Lawyers. You got to be a lawyer, right? You got to actively listen to all the words they're saying. You have to consistently ask the questions that narrow and further narrow the decision-making process. You like Cutco? You want Cutco? You'd use Cutco. Is it too much for the knives or too much for the budget? Is it a little too much or a lot too much? If you could afford it, would you get it? Which tools would you use the least? Which ones would you use the most? With or without the table knives? Do you not cook? Do you have to cook? Do you like to cook? Do you love to cook? Do you sometimes, maybe every once in a while, cut these types of foods? Right? You're asking a lot of these questions, which aids to framing because it puts your customer in the hot seat. Because in the end, it leads to the final conclusion of this. Now, I was talking with one of my students about this. Okay, so wait, Ms. Jones. So you like it, you want it, you'd use it, and if you could afford it, you'd get it. Yeah? Okay. If you ever ask your customer all of these questions and they agree to all these questions, and guys, I'm just being honest. If you ask them that, they say yes to all that, and then they don't buy something, then either with these questions, they have to either choose between a set of Cutco or groceries. If that's not really the ultimatum where it's like, if I buy this set, I can no longer afford food this week. If that's not the case, but they said yes to all that and didn't buy, guys, they lied to you. They lied to your face. Like, I need you to understand that. If they're saying, yes, I want it. Yes, I'd use it. Yes, I'd use it every day. It's worth it. I'd buy it if I could afford it. And they're not struggling between buying groceries or a set. I'm just being honest, but that's a lie then, because something can't be true here. And so it's the same way, like 15-year-olds in high school will drop $40 a week on Jewel pods and they don't have jobs. And a married couple with a full-time job can't afford it. Be a lawyer. Call out the BS. This leads us into technique and strategy. First key to technique and strategy is smoke screen objections. What are smoke screen objections? Honey, I can't afford it. Oh, I need to talk to my husband. Oh, this, oh, that. Everything that those questions I just asked are designed to see through. Smokescreen objections are all the knee-jerk reactions. It's the customer hiding behind something because we haven't answered yet the real reason for why they would purchase a set today. And I'm sorry to say, they'll definitely not be telling you the reason of why they would without you asking them a lot of questions and squeezing the truth out of them. It's like when someone you know lied about something and you know that they did, but when you kind of mention it and then they keep up the lie until you keep asking so many questions and it pierces through the BS that they finally come clean with it. Then the negotiation process actually starts. That's when you're actually negotiating on anything, because until you actually know what they're working towards, then you know, yeah. So the second key is visuals and writing prices. Decision making. Your customers need to understand everything, and everyone learns visually. Better said, anyone spending money needs to see the exact number, the discount, the 5-pay, the weekly price, along with everything they're paying for. And all you need to do is make sure you write it all down on the whiteboard, or having them write the prices down, along with either writing out all the things that their $2,000 buys them, or having a picture that shows it all. Either way, they need to have that in front of them so they can sit in silence and think about it. It's the exact same way if you've ever gone to Chipotle and you look up and you look down and you look up and you look down between the prices and your phone and your bank account. And you're like, okay, yeah, that number fits into this number. I can do that. Because I know I've gone into Chipotle and like looked up and looked down and done that little game before, right? And so the third thing is leveraging your manager throughout the dropping down process. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, it truly astonishes me how representatives will sell a few $1,000s or tens of thousands, and then somehow you start to believe that that you're somehow above ever calling in. Like, I can say this because I've personally sold a lot of Cutco, coached a lot of reps too, and done hundreds of presentations. I know all the deals and I still call in. Because the third tip is to leverage your manager. Leveraging is using the influence of another entity in the influencing of a decision or action. It adds another step to your drop down. It slows the entire process down. It can inject enthusiasm and excitement into a presentation. It can help put you on the same side of the table as your customer and truly emphasize the fact that you are with them, making the decision together and serving them and finding the best option for them. Fourth key for technique and strategy is the objection cycle and handling it beforehand. Now, I'm not going to dive into the objection cycle itself. You can watch the video on it later if you still don't know what the 4 steps in the objection cycle are. The point in understanding the objection cycle is to understand that running through it adds yet another no to the 4 to 5 no's that you must receive every presentation. Assuming you start at the homemaker, you'll get your first no there. Then you'll go through the objection cycle. You get to another no. Then you ask them some questions to try and clear some of the smoke screening, followed by leveraging your manager with a sweet deal or discount. Then you're 3 no's deep and you're only on a galley set. Rinse and repeat. Now, that objection cycle is one form of handling objections. However, I said these 5 keys are on technique and strategy. Well, taking strategy concepts from sports, from chess, from fighting, fencing, or like every lawyer, go ahead and write this down. The best way to handle an objection is to handle it beforehand. The best way to handle an objection is to handle it beforehand. Take it off the table. Make it impossible for your customer to even try to use it. For example, if you really want to go to this party and you know when you ask mom and dad, they're going to ask, hey, honey, did you clean your room? Did you do your homework? And you know that they're going to say that. You've been in this situation before. What do? Yeah, you clean your room and you do your homework beforehand. So you go to mom and dad and you're like, hey, mom, hey, dad, I cleaned my room. I did my homework. Can I go to the party? Did you clean your room though? Did you do your homework? Yeah, I said that. Can I go to the party? Right? It becomes asinine for the customer to try and use an objection you've already handled before they could use it. Right? This is what I mean by being a lawyer about it. You have the manual. You know what the presentation is like. There's only so many routes that they can really take. Strategize, adapt, overcome. Fifth key to strategy and technique is rebuilding the value. Lastly, you need to rebuild the value. You can frame the mindset of the customer. You can be assumptive and expecting. You can handle the objections beforehand. Either way, you will need to take it home and rebuild the value as you handle the objection and ask again. For example, hey, Ms. Jones, I completely understand how you feel. 1326 can feel like a lot to be impulsive with. However, most of our customers have found that over a lifetime, these basic tools in a block with a cutting board and a sharpener will guarantee you never have to look at more knives ever again for the rest of your life and your entire lineage forever, and won't need any sharpening for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And the best part is you have your 15-day money-back guarantee, so you and your husband, you can try this little basics out together to see if it's really worth it. And the best part is, Miss Jones, and what everyone else always does, is you'd actually be looking at today is only $289 after tax, a 1/5 fully refundable deposit, and I can still give you the super shears that you really love absolutely free. So Miss Jones, you want to go ahead and just try out your little basic set for the next 20, 30, 40 years? And so if you guys notice that, just walking through that little cycle, like, Miss Jones, give me another objection, right? Try me. And so now the question though that I've got to ask y'all, when I ran through that little cycle, am I pushing them? No. Am I forcing anything onto them? No. I'm strategically handling all potential objections, making it very easy for them to say yes, and rebuilding the value in Cutco. So with that, that brings us to the quick little conclusion of all of it, right? There are the two parts to this. We had first mentality and perspective, and 5 keys to mentality and perspective of affordability and understanding what they can afford or can't and why, assuming the sale and the use of weak language, framing and your expectations of the presentation and of the sale and of the process. 4, between your language, your tone, your pacing, and your enthusiasm in the dropping down process. And number 5, the negotiations, the verbal fencing, be a lawyer. And then on the other side, with technique and strategy, the 5 keys to technique and strategy. First, smoke screen objections, asking the questions to handle through that, to actually start the negotiations process. Second, of visuals and writing prices. Your customers have to see the numbers and see what they're actually spending their money on and what they're getting for it. Third, of learning to leverage your manager and adding that extra step to the drop down process. Fourth, the objection cycle and how to handle an objection beforehand. And the 5th key, rebuilding the value in Cutco as you slowly drop down through everything. 7 over. Appreciate y'all for sticking around 7 minutes over. If anyone has any takeaways, I'm down to stick around for it. But yeah, that's everything on dropping down. Okay, so anyone? Cool. All right. If anyone wants, you guys can stick around. You can ask me. I'll stick on for a few more minutes. Otherwise, go sell. Oh, you're up. Got it. Everyone can unmute if you want to ask me stuff. What's up, Elizabeth? Yeah, here. Boom. Try now.
Hi, so I constantly get a objection of like I can't afford this right now. Do you think it would be like once you have kind of gone over all the objections, but they still really like the product and they answer like yes to they I would use it if I had it. I really like it, all those stuff. Do you think it would be appropriate to ask them what is their budget or what would they looking to spend?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That is largely based on your connection and your rapport with them, because I've done that. I've 100% been like, all right, yeah, Ms. Jones, I completely understand. Like, what is the budget, so that I kind of know how I can better serve you, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
that typically is a little bit more sensitive, so you do want to make sure that that connection is established, right, where you
Okay.
can ask those types of questions. And if you can have it, then it makes it very clear. And so you can ask those questions, but again, this all comes back to the decision before the budget is ever actually the issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? They do have to legitimately be sold on it, and that's really what we want to focus on, because the money will always be found. They have credit cards for that. Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
Yes. Thank you.
Hey, Eddie, I gotta get started with another call here. So if you need to keep doing questions, you can do it on another Zoom, but we gotta wrap up.
Okay, cool.